welcome to the next episode of Just Advisor Things. I'm so excited for today's episode. We're with one of my very best friends in the whole entire world and planet, and we met because of the journalism community. So we are joined today by Samantha Berry. She is live from Atlanta, Georgia. She is the director of education for Katie Studios, but I'll let you tell her, I'll let her tell you guys a little bit more about herself. But first, welcome to Just Advisor Things, Sam. I'm so excited to chat with you today. How are you doing?
I'm great, and I am really excited to be here. I wish I was in your office, though. I feel like the last time we made a video, we were like side by side in your
We
office,
were. We
which
had lots
was
of tech
super
issues
fun.
trying to figure out the audio, though.
We did, but that's fine. That's fine. I'm doing great. I love this fall weather. So I'm always happiest whenever I can wear a sweater, and so I have no complaints, except for the time change. I do have complaints about that, but it's
Oh,
fine.
I know. I hate when I wake
But
up early and it's bright outside and I'm like,
I
gross.
didn't feel like I needed to save daylight. I don't know why
I
Renee did.
know. Or it's dark at 4 p.m. Like, I hate that.
I mean, she didn't feel like a damsel in distress to me. She doesn't need saving.
She
She's
doesn't.
fine. I just let her live her own life, guys. I just don't. I feel
I
like it's
know.
really dramatic.
I don't know where that's at in the legislation, but they were going to stop it at one point and then it
We
still
need to
keeps happening.
expedite it.
Yeah.
Expedite it
When
because
is
I'm
it over?
sorry. Leaving work at 5 p.m., which is a completely normal time to leave work,
Yes.
and
In the
it's like
dark,
almost dark outside. And
it's
did
rude.
you see that TikTok video of the kid that, wow, we've already gone off the rails. This is gonna happen more than once. But the TikTok of the kid that's like sobbing in the back and he's like, I just miss daylight.
Oh,
And I'm like,
no.
same. And he's like, I miss the sun. I want it to be sunny. And I'm like, same.
I know. And I love, like, I open all my windows. I want it light and bright. So I like that, I
Yes.
guess, in the morning. Technically, I do like that. Not right when I wake up, but I like the brightness, but I want it to last longer in the afternoon.
Yes.
So,
Agreed.
yeah,
Can't have it
it
all.
is what it is. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about your journey in education and advising, teaching, and all the way to where you are now.
I will be happy to do that. So just jump right in. I started teaching straight out of college, really because it was a recession and I couldn't find another gig. And I was confident that I was going to be the next Diane Sawyer or insert journalist here. And I just was very confident that that was my journey, that I was going to work for magazines or whatever that I was going to do. And no one was hiring. So I took a job as a journalism teacher in a small West Texas town. And I'll be completely transparent with everyone. I hated it for the first year. I cried every single day. I was not in a good place. And it was mostly because it was hard and I didn't have any support. So I did what is I did something that's completely foreign to me. Honestly, it's not something my people pleaser mind things to do. And I walked into my principal's office and I said, if you don't get me some help, I'm gonna quit. Like I'm just can't do this. He was great and he got me some help and he sent me to Dallas to work with someone who ended up becoming my mentor. And fast forward, that 1 year turned into 12. And I eventually learned to just love it. It absolutely was the right career for me. I mean, the Lord knew me better than I knew myself, if I'm being honest. And I that first year that was kind of miserable ended up being completely magical. And I just really, really enjoyed teaching, but really kind of toward the end, towards year 10, year 11, year 12, my heart kind of shifted a little bit. I was really lucky that during the pandemic, which is the worst year to student teach, I did have a student teacher. Again, the pandemic was the worst year to student teach,
For sure.
but I loved teaching her. I loved walking through the tough stuff with her, and I just realized that I wanted to be more boots on the ground in helping teachers. I wanted to help see journalism programs thrive the way that mine was thriving. And so I got a really great opportunity with a school photography company after several meetings. Katie was at those meetings with me. And it just started out as, hey, might do some freelance work, things like that. And just very quickly, I recognized a similar passion for the journalism industry in them that I had. And I just knew that it was a good fit. And so They, if you ever, this is my lesson and message to everybody, if you ever get an opportunity in life to make your own job and like help craft what that job description looks like, and you find people that believe in you, then you take it. And it was not, the timing was probably not what most people expected. And maybe some people weren't fans of it. I don't know, but it was really what was right for me. So in 2022, at the beginning in March of 2022, I left the classroom, and I always tell people I walked out of one classroom and into many. And
Right.
that's what I love, is that I now have the opportunity to help other advisors through whatever it is they're going through, create meaningful learning opportunities for them through convention grants, create curriculum for students, host professional development workshops, and all of that just really just feeds my soul. So that was my journey, from high school yearbook kid to now being a full-time guest yearbook photography professional. And I love it. It was where I'm meant to be.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think a lot of times it's really hard to leave in the middle of the school year, or like you didn't leave in the middle, but like
Mhm.
in March, once the yearbook was done.
Yeah.
But you just have to follow that, that you're harder on it sometimes. And like it was right, and I think it was, if you wouldn't have taken that opportunity,
Mhm.
that would not have been
And
right.
right, and I was so lucky that I I knew it was right whenever my principal was immediately supportive of it. I mean, you don't often as a teacher walk in and say, "I'm gonna leave mid-semester." And he was just over the moon excited. My students, obviously, there was a lot of sadness between all of us, like, just that we had done life together so much that leaving was so incredibly difficult, but they were so supportive. Their parents were supportive. Everyone felt really good about it. And I also was in a very unique position that my student teacher ended up, we had hired her to be my co-teacher. And so my kids had been with her for a long time. She's an exceptional human. And it just was right. Like it worked out for sure for us. And um I had such a supportive company that I was joining. I really, people ask me about that experience all the time, and I always say it was magical, like in a way that I can't explain. I don't know that it would be everyone's experience, but it was absolutely mine, and I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah. I know that, I mean, we both have left the classroom at this point, and that's actually
Mhm,
not even something we wanted to talk about, but on our list. But I think it is something that is interesting because I think a lot of times teachers are afraid to leave because they love
mhm.
their kids. But and that's true. Like I've never cried harder in front of my students when I was
Oh,
leaving.
I
Like
sobbed.
it was so hard. And but I keep in touch with them, and at the end of the day, like they love you and want you to be happy, and they understand that this is what's best for you, even though they're not an adult yet and they don't have that experience. Like I think that they definitely can understand that, from a even a surface level. So
And
yeah.
they asked such good questions when I was leaving, and, they asked my why, all those things, and one of them asked a question that just hasn't left me, and she said, "What are you excited to do post-teaching that you couldn't really do as a teacher?" And I had to sit with that for a little while, and when I finally got to the answer, it's still the thing I love, and it was advocacy. That I was excited that I could not worry about living in a teacher bubble too much, and I could just say my piece about things, that I could advocate for teachers, and I could be a part of making teachers' lives better and easier. And that's also what I've really loved about being on this side of education, is that now my community are still journalism teachers,
Mhm.
obviously. I mean, they're still my best friends. Like, I love people, all these journalism teachers, but I also have joined in with a community of people that have similar positions as I do. And we are very much so focused on advocacy for teachers,
Mhm.
creating good materials for teachers, creating good experiences for teachers. And that has been such a blessing, for lack of a better word. It's just been a
Yeah.
really rich community to be a part of, is in that education and education support doesn't always look like just people in the classroom.
For
And
sure.
I think that that's a message I have for anyone out there that wants to understand more about teaching and education, is that we have to come alongside teachers and we have to support them. What they do, that's the hardest job I'll ever do, is
Yeah.
teaching. Except for if I become a parent one day, I mean, that will probably be the hardest job, but teaching is parenting in
Yeah.
so many ways.
Oh,
And
it's
so that
being a
was,
therapist and a doctor and a nurse.
yes, like, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's being all of it.
It's been all of it, and I mean, that opportunity to love kids and support kids and that, for 12 years is absolutely to me, like, the most important work I'll ever do. But now I'm just so excited to support the people who do that for kids, and,
Sure.
I don't take it lightly.
Yeah. I have to say something also that I love being able to do that I couldn't do as a teacher is pee whenever I want. Like
That's a good one. I will say going to the bathroom whenever I want is, it's not
it's
anything
elite.
you can't undervalue it. You can't undervalue just
Yeah, you
being able to go
can't.
to the bathroom whenever you want. I do not miss bells. Like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
the thing. Like, it was such a deprogramming I had to do that I always expected a bell to tell me when I could transition into something, and now it's like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
just have time."
I do
So,
set
really,
my
at the
own bells
beginning of
though. I
this.
have my little
Oh,
timers
yes.
because I
At the
do
be
need that like trigger to remind me, like, hey, don't get so caught up in one thing. You have 80 other things to do.
I do that as well. I have to, like, block my time, and I was like, "Oh, I'm basically building in class periods. Okay, cool. I'm
So
still
I
a
do
teacher."
like the bell. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
turns out I do like it, yeah.
yeah. That's
I told
funny.
Katie, "You're gonna all see me transition between multiple hydration." I've got coffee, Coke Zero, and water, and,
Good.
I just,
I love
you
it.
know,
A hydrated girl.
I would not say
Temperaturely.
I'm hydrated. The water gets largely ignored. In fact, I probably am due a fresh thing of water. I don't even know it. I think it's from
Do
yesterday.
you bring them all in the morning and you're like, carry on?
Yes, like, "Hi, guys."
Welcome. That's
Yeah.
funny. Okay, so one thing that I like when we met, I was so drawn to you because first of all, you're hilarious. I could sit and just listen to you talk all day long. But I also noticed that you just had such a good classroom culture. Like you are like the queen of building a family-like atmosphere, which I think is also just so helpful to when you go to help other advisors and how to do that. So I mean, talking about how you didn't start loving teaching and then how you built that, like, I mean, it was a yearbook machine essentially. So, like, how did you do that? What advice would you give on how an advisor can foster that environment?
So thank you. That's really nice, of you to say, and when I talk about the classroom all the time, I always say that's what I miss the most, are the relationships that I had with kids. I miss that, I miss the classroom noises in a lot of ways. I miss the laughter and the funny jokes and all that kind of stuff because I don't know, it really fueled me. And so even when I hated teaching, I really enjoyed kids. I enjoyed teenagers. I think they're hilarious. And so that was just something that came pretty naturally to me. So as I talk through this, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not gonna be a linear answer. So I hope that it is helpful in a sense of that I don't have like a 12-step process to building great culture. I just have just kind of some tips that I think help, if that makes sense. And I think platitudes is the right word. I think a lot of my students would say that I built a lot of my classroom culture on some platitudes of this, hold on to this one phrase and let's build a culture around it. Um, but in terms of building a really great classroom culture is first of all understanding it's their classroom before it's mine. I remember growing up and having teachers that would say, like having both kinds of teachers that would say, "This is my classroom and I'm the queen of this domain and this is going to be mine." And then there were teachers that I felt like they put us first in the classroom. And so I think that there's just that natural decision that comes for every teacher is which are you going to gravitate toward? And I just really grasped onto while rules were really important and boundaries were very important, those could exist still in a student first environment. That whenever they came in, I treated them as if they set the tone. So whenever the tone was off and if it was kind of according to them, then we addressed that. But if they were coming in already setting a good tone, I let that tone keep going. So
Yeah.
rewarding good behavior and good culture from students, good attitudes mattered a lot to me. And I think when students saw me elevating that kind of good behavior, those good attitudes, that it, encouraged them to make good choices. One of the biggest transformative things for me, and if there are new teachers watching this, I hope if you're feeling this way, you'll feel seen by this, was I will never forget the day I was sobbing on the phone. It was probably about my 3rd or 4th, it was my 4th year of teaching, and sobbing on the phone with my mentor, and he said, "Never let the emotions of a 15-year-old ruin your day like this."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I am putting way too much stock in self-identity into what a group of 15-year-olds think about me." Then I really started doing some deep work and processing with why was that, like digging into why do I care this much, and really finding a way to take conflict in my classroom and take a more kind of loving approach to it rather than a fear approach. I was I was taking an incredibly I was taking a real fear approach to a lot of conflict in my classroom. And so I started really kind of dissecting what was the thing that I was afraid of. Okay, I was afraid everybody was going to quit my staff. Well, one, they weren't able to quit. So there was
Right.
that. I don't know, they were all going to turn against me and ruin my life. Well, they're 15, so
Yeah.
they're not going to do that. And so really kind of processing through what was the worst that I thought was going to happen and why did I feel that way, and learning to not fear those things, because I think kids are already afraid of a lot of those things happening to them. Like they're afraid they're going to get kicked off of something. They're afraid everyone's going to hate them, all of that. Well, me perpetuating those fears in myself didn't help anybody.
Yeah.
And so
Even though you weren't
recognizing,
saying them out loud, your energy was maybe,
oh yeah, they pick up on that energy for sure. And I can actually attest to that. I, during my 3rd year of teaching, had a student walk up to me and say about another student that I was scared of that student. And I was so offended. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "You are afraid of the student." And I said, and I just, of course, went defensive and just wanted to understand what she was talking about. And she said, "Well, it's very obvious in the way that you spend more time managing her emotions than you do understanding the impact of her emotions on the rest of us, essentially." And
Mm.
I realized how much I was forgiving from her in an effort to just try to keep her drama away from me. And that was completely unfair to the rest of the kids in the class. So, wow, this is a really long story to kind of get to. I just really got to this place of when it came to classroom culture, understanding that conflict was natural, but drama was a choice. And taking the conflict and saying, we are going to address it right now. We are not going to let things sit and fester. We're going to hold people accountable. I had a lot, like, I had a lot of rules surrounding conflict and how we handled conflict, but I also realized I had to teach them how to handle conflict.
Mhm.
I had to really walk through that with students and help them understand what was an appropriate way to deal with your anger, deal with your frustration, your disappointment, insert emotion, because I didn't know if they were getting that kind of training or advice or guidance at home. And so that became a huge part of building culture in my classroom, was just recognizing that that drama was then a choice, but the conflict was just natural. And helping kids not fear conflict the way I had always feared conflict um, was really helpful. So that was a big part of classroom culture. Was I learned that really the more times that we could solve a problem and solve a conflict together, the more they trusted me later
Mhm.
when it came to maybe if we did have a bigger conflict. So helping them learn that drama and bitterness and anger and all of that just don't have a place. That they're not welcome here. They disrespect the community that we're trying to build. Also helping them understand you don't have to like everybody that you work with. I had a principal that would always say, we don't come to work for our social and emotional needs. And I took that and I used it in my classroom. We're not here for our social and emotional needs. However, liking each other is a bonus.
Mhm.
And so we're not required to like each other, but getting along and having a good community and not having drama when we come into class is massive.
Yeah.
So that
Good.
was a big part of culture, was that we talked out a lot of things. I didn't let conflict sit and fester. At the beginning of my career, I really did. Later in my career was when I stopped and I felt like that classroom culture really grew. I also then had an epiphany too when it came to the approach I took with students. I think we're all used to the editors or whoever coming to us and saying, so and so isn't working, so and so is doing this, so and so is doing that. And it's negative, negative, negative. Recognizing that 20% of the people in the classroom are maybe not meeting the mark, but 80% are. But yet that 20% are getting 80% of our energy. So give the percentage of energy to the percentage of positive, right? So if 80% of them are doing great things, 80% of my energy is going into that, and not rewarding bad behavior or disrespectful behavior with more of my energy than it is warranted.
Mhm.
That was a big part of building culture as well, but also being very honest with them about that. Being like, no, I'm choosing to give my energy to the students that are working really hard. Now, if you need help, if you need guidance, if you need a shoulder to cry on, I'm here. But the thing I'm not giving energy is laziness, disrespect, and
Mhm.
unwillingness to work. Like, those are things I'm not giving energy to. Life is about choices. These are the consequences of your choices.
Right.
Laying those consequences out very clearly for them, and don't beg. I would say that that is one of the biggest lessons I learned was I would beg kids that were struggling to just just do this, just
Do
do that, just
something.
do this.
Yeah.
I stopped begging. I was just very concrete and clear about what the expectations were and what the consequences were, and I was also very focused on meeting kids where they were. I think that's also a big lesson for building good classroom culture is teaching kids the difference between equal and equitable.
Right.
That is huge. Having that conversation early on that if you are here expecting everything to be equal, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Here's what it means to be equitable. But practicing that equitability with every single student when it's needed is incredibly important. You will have a lot of kids that don't require any sort of special treatment or attention or energy, but rewarding the fact that you don't need that with maybe a day off or a reduced amount of work for a deadline cycle or just a really sweet thank you note is also meeting those students where they are as well.
Mhm.
So that also came with a lot of culture is explaining kids what equitability meant. That if a kid just lost their grandparent and then their dog and then their boyfriend broke up with them and they failed a math test, they're gonna need a little bit more love, and that might mean I forgive an assignment for them that week,
Right. Like,
and
don't look
somebody
at
else
it
picks it
as
up.
favoritism. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not favoritism at all. It's just really trying to go above and beyond to meet every kid where they're at. So, I was not perfect at that at all. I will never claim to be perfect at any of this, but it was just that I felt like the more energy I put into things like that, the more my classroom culture increased. And then, I mean, one of the biggest things is every kid wants a place to belong.
Mhm.
Every single kid. That's why they join sports. That's why they join band, all these things. Well, journalism programs are no different. This is the thing they want to be proud of. So when it came to wanting to build that culture, I needed to take the same approach that they saw their peers getting in other organizations. If the band kids all had matching crew necks, then my kids needed matching crew necks. If the football team did a Halloween social, my students needed a Halloween social. So we went through the process of building in things that were unique to our group, but were frequent enough to not feel like band aids.
Mhm.
And they were more, and that's a big thing is when you're trying to build culture and you're planning something, if it feels like a band aid event, like if it's
Yeah.
a breakfast at Whataburger on the weekend, but it's a band aid event because you've had a lot of drama, mm,
It feels like that. Like, you
that
can't
it's what
force
it's
it.
gonna feel like, and they won't wanna come. So, it's setting up those fun events and those, socials and all of that early on before you've even had conflict, and
Mhm.
making them as mandatory as humanly possible. Expecting kids to come, building up excitement so they want to come. That's a huge part of it, is that don't plan events, happy days, things like that as a Band-Aid.
Mhm.
Plan them ahead of time as, sustenance. They're part of the meal of
Right.
being a part
It's an
of this
expectation
group.
of
Right.
bonding,
We're feeding their
friendship.
souls as much as
Yeah.
we're feeding their minds. And, celebrating them when they do something good. So competing, doing competitions, traveling, things like that were also a huge part of bonding. I just really wanted them to walk down the halls of our school and say, I'm proud to be in this journalism program. The
Mhm.
same way the band kids did, the theater kids, the football kids. You wanted them to be proud of what they were involved in. So I mean, that was a very nonlinear answer, 100%.
That's great.
So,
It's so
but
insightful. As I said, I could just listen to you talk all day. Okay, but I do want to go back. You mentioned a couple of things. First is when you were like letting the 15-year-olds affect your mental health, which I think is so insightful for your mentor had to have told you. Um, Something that was told to me, and I think is so important to remember, is that even though these, especially if you're a high school teacher, these kids look like adults. Like
oh
they
yeah.
walk like adults, talk like adults, feel like they are adults, but at the
Mhm.
end of the day, they are kids, like they
Yeah.
are still developing. Their frontal cortex, like biologically, is not developed yet. And a lot of times I struggled because I didn't have a background in education. So I
Mhm.
came from like the corporate world where I'm working with adults, and I had this expectation that how do you not know how to do this? I've told you how to do
Right.
this. So that reminder of like, oh, it's going to take me a couple of times to tell you how to do this, and not getting frustrated by that or taking that personally, but just remembering that they're kids and they're going to screw up. And
Mhm.
that's the environment where we want them to screw up. So, you know,
Well, exactly what you said, and I think that journalism classrooms are so unique in that we can take a little bit of a different approach in what we do. It's a creative classroom. Almost every single other class they take is measured on perfection. Math is graded on perfection, science is graded on perfection, history, English, all of it is graded on perfection. And so there's a lot of weight on their shoulders of I have to get 100% on this math test. I have to get 100% on this. I've got to do 100% of my homework, all of this. And while we want them to do 100% as well, doing 100% in our class doesn't look the same as it does in a core class.
right.
And that's not to say we're better or anything like that. It's just different standards. And so that was a huge mind shift for me as well, was that not every kid was going to be on the same skill level. I mean, a
Mhm.
lot of that there was a lot of variables that went into that. Were they able to take my entry level class? Did they transfer from another school? Are they a senior and or a sophomore? Every kid was going to come in there with a different skill level, a different set of talents, and also just and different knowledge and all that. So I really shifted my grading process and the way I spoke to kids on progress over perfection. And that was something I sought out with them a lot, was that I rewarded progress. Working toward an end goal, getting farther along in the process
Genuine
was
effort.
a
Mhm.
genuine effort was exactly what I graded on. I stopped grading on perfection because that also was what I needed them to take risks. I needed them to try things out that failed. They were so afraid of failure because one failed math test could completely screw up their GPA.
Mhm.
That wasn't what we were at in journalism. So I did a lot of projects at the beginning of the year that 100% I knew they were not going to do well on in terms of perfection, but they did great on in terms of progress. They learned new InDesign tool skills. They wrote a little bit longer of a story than they had the time before. They wrote 6 headlines this time rather than 2 headlines, whatever it was. And I just shifted everything to grading on that progress. And then I also I had a policy with kids that I didn't allow them to ask me their grade. When they would say, "What's my grade?" I would say, "Ask me a different question." And they would say, "How am I doing?" I say,
Mm.
"Okay, well, let's look at your progress. It looks like you have hit 100% of what we expected you to do this week. Like you turned in everything that you were supposed to. Great. Now let's look at where I think you're at skill level wise, and let's see maybe if we can put some stuff together to maybe like just improve." I did a lot of teaching alongside them. When people ask me all the time of, well, how did you get your kids to design on this level? I sat next to them a lot.
Yeah.
I got away from my desk or I brought them to my desk.
Mhm.
We sat and we did things together a lot. And that's a huge mind shift as well about yearbook. I realized that the first half of my career, yearbook was okay, here's the ladder, who's doing what on the ladder, and get it done. And then a lot of yelling about why things weren't done.
Right.
And really, COVID did a lot of this for me. When we had to check on everything together all the time, I realized that was the best way to do it. Constantly looking at things together. We started writing headlines together. We started choosing images together. We printed out our spreads every single week and everybody got to see them so they could see the progress. that was when it really truly started to feel like a group project, and I loved it,
Yeah,
and it changed everything. And so that's a big message that I have for people, is pursue progress, not perfection. In fact, I had a girl put that on the back of her Letterman jacket.
I love
On the little tail, it says progress, not perfection, progress over perfection. I don't remember how she phrased it. And then do things together. Reward work together. Let kids feel comfortable if things aren't 100%. If they did 100% of the work, we can get it to 100% of
yeah,
the quality that we want it to be, but we need to reward opportunity to reteach and redo and all of that. So that was a huge mind shift for me. And in terms of building culture, when kids felt safe to fail, they also were closer to the people who caught them when they fell.
for sure. Yeah.
So that was, I guess, also just shifting your mindset of, it was also later in my career that I realized I stopped fearing the conflict and the drama per se. And I started, even when kids would come to me to talk about it, I would say, what a great opportunity to love this kid better. What a great opportunity
They're
for
like,
us to teach them. Yeah. Oh, and they'd look at me like I
but
had like
that's
three
such a good
heads.
life lesson. I mean,
Oh my
there's so
God.
many opportunities in journalism to learn soft
Mhm.
skills and life lessons that you just don't get in the math classroom.
You don't. And I was so lucky to have kids that really, and I mean, here's the thing I'll always say about teachers. You will always attract it, your energy will always attract similar energy.
Mhm.
And so that was something that I realized too. The sassier I was, like, and if I was rude or anything like that, that might attract a kid that wants to treat people like that. And there's no bad kids. I want to be very clear. There's no bad kids. And sometimes kids came in with energies that were different from mine, but by the time we were all said and done, they were a little bit more similar. And that was just a constant putting out of my energy and telling kids all the time that when we had conflict, what a good opportunity to love this kid better. And that's not to say I was not 100%. I didn't get frustrated. I got frustrated. I had kids I was angry with. All those things existed. But that's just a good lesson for kids too, of challenging them to say, I bet that you can shift this kid's perspective. Why don't you just go try to love them and see if that shifts, and watching that energy change. And the most rewarding thing for me now is that most of these students now are adults. My last students are graduating this year, and all the ones that are in college, they still talk.
Yeah.
You know, they several of them have my classroom number tattooed, like, somewhere, and I'm still supposed to get mine because that was an agreement we all made. But it's fun to watch how they are still friends, how they support. I have a former student, and I love this student dearly. He is a self-published poet now. He's written several poetry books.
Ooh.
Watching them post all over their Instagram that they have bought copies of
Yeah.
his poem, like his books, I mean, it just makes me weep. One of my former students is now the design editor for the Aggie Lane yearbook. Watching them comment on that Instagram post and share that Instagram post and celebrate her makes my heart warm, hearing from their parents. So that's a big thing of, if you treat it like a family and you treat conflict the way you would in your own family, and you just say, we're working through this and we're not giving up, it
Yeah,
changes it.
for
It's a
sure.
huge part of the culture.
Yeah, I learned a lot of that from you, and I think that's why I had success as well and my yearbooks weren't the best. I mean, it wasn't like,
They were good though. Your
they were
books
good.
are pretty good.
I'm not gonna lie, like I was proud of them, but like what I prided myself on was our family culture though. Like I
Yeah.
felt like those kids graduated knowing that they had a family that they, had in high school and that they would be loved throughout the rest of their life because of the bonds that we created there, which
Yep.
was to me, as much as I am the biggest yearbook geek ever and I love it, that's
Mhm.
more important than the
Oh,
yearbook,
100%. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved winning the crowns and pacemakers. It is
Yeah,
a great feeling, but I loved it because the way it made my kids feel.
right. Yeah.
Loved their faces. And most of all, what I loved was they would run to hug each other. And that when we would, and one of my most favorite memories was the first time I got to take them to a national convention for the last school I was at. We went to DC to the
Mhm.
JEA NSBA convention, and we were lucky enough to have a few kids that were up for individual awards.
Mhm.
And I have pictures of them holding pinkies with each other before each award was read and
Yeah.
cheering and screaming. And I
And
have this really
crying.
great picture of one girl holding her plaque and they're all crying. And it's that to me was when I really was
Oh
like,
yeah.
ooh, we're doing something right. There's
Yeah.
something magical here. And I they will always be one of the some of the best years of my life.
For
Were
sure.
those years that I had with my students through all 3 schools that I was at. Those years I had with those students are the best years.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I always say it's such a special season, and that's why I think it's such an interesting transition out of the classroom, because you miss it so much because you
Yeah,
love those kids and you love building that environment. But now we're both in an opportunity where we get to help other advisors create that environment,
right.
which I think, has the trickle down effect. So instead of you in your one classroom and me in my one
Mhm.
classroom, like that's why just advisor things I wanted to start it was even just because I get a lot of questions about that kind of thing. How do I build that environment? And,
Mhm.
I can't necessarily come to every single classroom. You can't come to every single classroom and
Right.
build it, but we can help them on a wider scale so they can build it for themselves. And that I think also creates better yearbooks. Like even if the
Mhm.
the content, you have to teach it and it evolves, having that family like environment where like the kids feel invested and bought into the
Yeah,
project, they will do better work. So,
100%. This is always a good way to know if your kids are invested. Look at their Instagram bios.
yeah,
If their
yearbook
Instagram
kid.
bios include BHS yearbook, yearbook editor, you've got those kids. They
Yeah,
are invested. So
because
don't
they
put up any
identify
barriers.
as the yearbook kid.
Yeah, don't put up any barriers for them. Let them run.
Mhm,
Sign them up for the webinars. Take them
mhm.
to the conventions. Let them come back and take it. Let
Yeah.
them go to the critiques. Take your I mean, I loved when I would get to the point in my classrooms where I would say, "I'm here to pay your bills." Like, that's what it
You make
is.
the decisions. Yeah.
You make those choices, and now I'm here to advise you. I'm here to tell you if I don't know if I do that, you know what I mean? Because we have to make those decisions sometimes. I mean, I'll
Right.
be fully transparent. If any kid was like, "I'm gonna put Comic Sans in the book," I would be like, not in this book,
Here,
not in my
delete
book, you're not."
it.
All of a sudden, our book becomes my book really fast, where I'm like,
Yeah.
"Absolutely not. That's not the thing." But so there is a level of that. Those things you have to still advise, but advising them through the mechanics of building it, but letting them take the lead on what they loved, and just that was the best part. And so get out of their way.
Yeah.
Gen Z, they are brilliant.
Oh my
They
gosh, so
are
creative.
so creative, so smart, so passionate. Get out of their way. And here's a big thing too. And I talk to advisors about this all the time, and they will say, "Oh, but I don't know how to do this." Okay,
Learn.
Google it,
Let's figure it
or
out.
don't learn. Tell the kids to do it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how many times people would walk in my classroom and we would have YouTube up and trying to learn some sort of Illustrator or InDesign or Photoshop skill, and we'd be yelling and we'd be like, "This is so stupid! I hate Adobe!" Like, and yelling, and then the cheers, like we'd be like, "Wait, wait, 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 wait," then we'd make everybody sit while we showed them how to do it, and everybody would be like, "Oh my god, we figured it out! Like, look at what we did!" And those were the best days. Was whenever we learned something, and it was great. So people ask me all the time if I miss the classroom, and yeah, of course I do. What teachers do is absolutely incredible. I love those kids. I just love that we are able to be there for such formative years of their life. And and that's always my boyfriend is a high school history teacher, and I always tell him I had a pretty charmed life as an educator. I was the fun class.
Yeah.
It was the fun class. We were creating an actual product that kids wanted and that they bought, and it was fun. It wasn't fun 100% of the time, but
Right.
more 90% of the time, it was so fun.
Sure. Yeah.
And I also was like, I had students for multiple years. So by the time they graduated, I knew their parents, I knew their
Oh yeah.
grandparents, I knew their siblings. I'd already had their siblings signed up for class. I knew their dogs because their dogs came up for Saturday work days. Like,
I always joked
it,
that when
it was
graduation
great.
came around, I had like anywhere from 10 to 20 kids graduating. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah,
you just have your one kid graduating. Like, I'm crying because I have 20. Like,
exactly.
you
I
love
went to
them
so
like
many
your own
graduation
kids.
parties. Like,
Yeah.
I remember sobbing at banquet at the end of the year because it
Oh, yeah.
truly was like, one, I'm a crier anyway,
Yeah.
and I'm dramatic. So I am both of those things. But I truly was like watching what felt like, my child growing up.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was always the thing too. That was like, I co-parented for 12 years with the best people on the planet.
Yeah.
I learned so much about, and this has taken a whole different turn, but
I
this is
know.
another message to teachers, especially journalism teachers. Their parents are incredible. And I was so lucky that almost 100%. I just respected their parents so much. And the opportunity to be friends with their parents and get to know them, they're still some of my friends.
Yeah.
Like, I love them. If I had a problem, I would call them, you know? And so one day I'm excited that if I ever become a parent, I feel like I learned from some of the best.
Yeah. I was just
And
messaging one of my
yeah.
students on Instagram because she was celebrating with her mom and they were like clinking
Mhm.
wine glasses. And I was like, I want to come. Like, they were like,
Mhm.
just so
And they would
natural
invite
because
you. I
they're
don't know how many
friends.
times I've
Yeah.
gotten invited on family cruises, family
Yeah.
vacations, like, you know, kids will text me, "My mom asked about you today," and I'm like, "Well, you can tell your mom to text me. I love your
Yeah.
mom."
Give her
Like,
my
I'm
number. Yeah. I
like,
love
"I'm
it.
gonna go hang out with your mom." So it's just great. It's such a good and special time. And so when it comes to building culture, I will say it is a lot of work. It is a lot of, and I definitely
Intentionality.
have some things that I did that were better than some other things. But it's worth it. It's one of the things I did, and this was pre-COVID. I did this more. This was at my second school. This was a tradition. Was right during yearbook deadline, whenever they were all stressed, because we know yearbook deadlines. Everybody, it's the photo kids, it's the J1 kids, it's the yearbook kids, it's the newspaper kids. Everybody's all hands on deck to finishing that yearbook. I would do something called love letters,
Mhm.
and I would send out a Google survey, and had it hooked up. I used AutoCrad. I had all these bells and whistles hooked up to it, but I would send it out to all the teachers and former students and their parents, and I would say, write this kid a love letter.
Mhm.
And you might want to change it in today's day and age. I don't know if you can call it a love letter anymore, but
Yeah.
mid like 2015, like
Yeah.
this was
It
fine.
was fine.
It was fine. It wasn't creepy. Okay. I wasn't doing anything creepy. And I read them all, so it was fine.
Yeah.
But people would write these letters to kids of encouragement, of just, um, it was just so good. The things, I mean, I would weep reading them. Like the way teachers would talk to these kids, being
Mhm.
like, I'm so proud of you. Like, and the way teachers would support my classroom in that way. I
Right.
knew teachers were busy, but they loved it. And I would have them ask every year, when is that going to do? When are you going to do that again? When are you going to do that again? That was so fun. I ended up sharing that Google Drive out with, or Google form out with a ton of people.
Mhm.
Um, about how I did it and all this kind of stuff, and other classrooms used it, and that was what
I
was
did.
important to me.
I got it from you, and it was just it is so sweet. There, I put them all up on a bulletin board, and they were all just up there
Yeah,
reading it for 20 minutes, and I was like, oh, that's just
and they
beautiful.
would
So
cry, and
yeah,
they just would feel so good. But the best part of it, and people would be like, "Why'd you do it?" And I'm like, "Because 10 minutes after that, there was no more laziness when it came to
they
the
were
yearbook. They
that.
were getting with it." And because they knew that all these people were excited about what they were creating.
Mhm.
And it was just so good to give love back to my students. Like, an extension, I knew that there was only so many times I could say thank you, and only so many times I could tell them how great they were. They needed to hear it from other people. And
Mhm.
also, there is just never too much of that. And I'm an encourager in nature. I'm an Enneagram 2. I'm a Cancer. Like, I am an encourager at my heart. And so, but again, it can fall flat when you hear it from me every day. Like, you walk in every day and I'm just like, "You're the best thing ever. I just love you so
Yeah,
much." Like, "All right, shut up, lady. We get
we
it. You
get
like it."
it. Yeah.
So the ability to have other people do that was an incredible thing. So I'll highly recommend something like that, like going above and beyond. Thank you letters, thank you post-it notes, like,
Yeah,
just
I love.
celebrate people. Celebrating.
Okay, believe it or not, we're almost out of time, so I don't want
Oh my
to.
gosh.
I know we'll have to have like a second episode because we had a whole
Right.
list of things to talk about and we could just chat forever. But
Yeah.
something you mentioned that I wanted to touch on because it's something I struggled with big time is in building that family like atmosphere, right? Like you have these kids,
Mhm.
it's going great. You have them just
Yeah.
huddled around your desk constantly. They want to stay after school and work on the book. How, as the advisor that is that type of advisor, how do you
Mhm.
build in your that boundaries, like going home at a right time and just having breathing room during lunch? Like that was my struggle for sure, especially in the beginning. So, what
I
advice do you
definitely
have?
Oh, I don't think I'm the person that should be giving advice on this, because I clearly had no boundaries. And I mean, I had boundaries. Like, don't get me wrong, I had boundaries with kids, But in terms of my boundaries on my time, I did not have a lot of that. But towards the end, I did develop better boundaries. And some of the things that I learned was that I didn't have to give 100% of my time for kids to be invested. One of the things that I learned was, and it actually took, I was about my ninth year, I think it was ninth or 10th. I got really sick. I got a really bad cold and I was trying to struggle through because we were in the middle of yearbook deadline. And I will never forget, one of the kids' moms called me
Oh,
and said, "You need to go home." Like, she was like, "You no one expects this, like, you need to stop." And it was really like, "Oh, no." Like,
yeah.
I've become a martyr to busy. I've become a martyr to thinking I have to give 110%.
But
So
I'm
then
so
my
guilty
advice,
of that. I have to go to work. I have a deadline. I
I
can't
have to do it. I have to.
get a
Now the
sub.
world will not continue spinning without me.
Right. It
I
will.
don't need to share my entire personal story of 2022 to tell you that that is not true. The
Yeah.
world will continue to spin if you take a day off. But one of the things that I did toward the end was, and this is, I highly recommend, I use the Band app, but any sort of staff
Great.
communication is great. And I, on Sundays, would send the schedule. These were days I was staying after school, non negotiable. Don't ask me for another day. These were the days I was staying after school. Plan accordingly.
Mhm.
That was huge. And then set a timer whenever you walk in, or give them the time that we have a hard stop at 4:30.
Mhm.
That was huge to
Yeah.
giving me
I
some
wish
time
I
back
did
in my
that.
life. It was this open-ended, "Oh, I'll just stay when you need me." Stop saying, "I'll stay when you need me."
They will stay forever. And sometimes that's a
They
good thing
will.
because they need a place and they don't feel comfortable at home. But at the
And
same time, it's not your job to
you
babysit
have to
them.
go home. Yes,
Yeah,
you have to go home. And it helps make the most of the time that you do have
it
together. But
does.
one thing I learned is the kids love you and they want you to be healthy. And the first year I did it, I was so hesitant and I thought they would be so mad. And I cannot tell you how many kids were like, "I love that you're taking time for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're doing this. You need time for yourself." Like, that is massive. So set boundaries around your time, set a schedule, be very concrete about it, set the expectation, and kids will follow suit. They
Mhm.
want, and what I also learned was they also wanted those boundaries.
Mhm.
They
They
also
thrive
wanted to
with
know,
structure.
yes, they wanted the structure. So that's a big thing. And as I definitely am not the person to 100% be giving time, advice on this, because for 12 years of my life, I did nothing but teach.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I had no regrets. But I had to learn the hard way with a collapsed lung. That's a whole other story about how to start saying no and taking care of myself when I'm ill. Nobody wins a prize for going to work sick. They
No.
just don't. So stay home, get healthy, take
Yeah.
care of your
I think
lungs.
I mean, COVID was terrible in a lot of ways, but I think there's a lot of things that have been helped like greatly by like the whole
Right.
COVID that's
Mhm.
shifted our workplace, I mean, obviously our economy is going through it right now, but I think going to work sick used to be the norm and
Mhm.
now it is not. And I think that
Yeah,
that is
100%.
really, really good. So if you're sick, don't go to school, but also take mental health days. Like there is
Yes.
that's
Schedule
something
them
I didn't do
in.
until my very last year teaching because I truly
Mhm.
needed them that year. But like I would just struggle through and be like, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
stressed out and I just want to break down in tears and cry because of this deadline. But I
Well,
wouldn't take a break, and
and
eventually
you
I'd like
need to take a break.
you have to teach
And
your
if it says
students that
anything,
too.
right, about when my last year of teaching, I left teaching with 6 weeks of days
Yeah. You
unused.
didn't use them.
I don't get anything for those.
Yeah.
So that was, and I
Not even a
communicated
pat
to
on
them
the
in that.
back, like
Nope,
nothing.
no, there was no prize. There was no prize at the end of it. And I really thought about the fact that those days off are built into your salary, and then that's part of your perk. And at the end of the day, that was about $11,000 that I
Mhm.
essentially just donated to the state of Texas
Yeah. Like
because
that sucks.
and I couldn't even give them to somebody else, like nothing. And I'm not saying drain your personal and state days every year. I'm not saying that, but I am saying take a day off. It's
Yeah.
okay. And if you needed to hear that today and it feels like it's hitting you right here, that means you
It's
need to go put in
time.
for a day off. And you
Absolutely.
know what? You need to go to the movies. You need to sit on your
Yeah.
couch and read a book.
Yeah.
You need to
Get some
go to
expensive
Disney
food
World.
delivered and
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I
If you go to
totally.
Disney World, take Katie and me. We'll go with you.
Hey, we
We're a
love
great
Disney
time.
World. We are
We're a great
down
time.
always.
But
Um,
just there is no expectation to just absolutely destroy your body, mind, and soul. Like, and the
yeah.
kids don't want you to. So that's
No.
a myth too. The kids don't want you to.
That's a really big passion of mine, not being in the classroom anymore and really feeling for teachers and trying to help them as much as I can is obviously the educational side of things. You know, we want them to have really good materials and curriculum and resources for
Mhm.
that. But um, by and large, teachers are ignored when it comes to their mental health and their like
Mhm.
just socially how, you know, we respect them and stuff.
Right.
And I just want advisors in particular because they're singletons on their campus. Like, really no one knows what we do except for us. Like
Right.
it's even our spouse that we vent to, like he doesn't know what it's like to put a
Yeah.
yearbook together. I want advisors to feel like, you know, people like you and I are here for you. Like we
Oh,
get it.
absolutely.
We're here to help you through those hard days because there are some hard days, you know, and
Call us
you're
and
not
cry.
alone. Yeah.
Call us and cry, call us and complain. I feel like some of the biggest conflicts I worked through in my classroom was with people like you. Like we would call and I mean we wouldn't say anything inappropriate about students, but we would talk about the situation
The
and we would
situation.
get feedback about like maybe there was a different perspective to this situation I hadn't thought about. Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think about that might be going on at home, XYZ.
Yeah, we
So,
had a whole group chat, which was like my favorite. It
mhm,
literally saved me my last year teaching when I really
it was
truly
the
needed it.
best.
We called it the
Yeah.
YGG, the yearbook grievance gathering. And like
Yes.
it's
And
the
it was
best. Like you need those people.
mhm. Well, you do. And so that's my I guess that's my parting message to anybody is as much as it's take care of yourself, the more you take care of yourself, the better culture you have in your classroom, but also get a journalism community. If you don't have a journalism community, join your local state organization, join national organizations, go to conventions even if by yourself, get involved with the journalism community because they are the best people. Like
And it
just
makes the
I
job
can't
easier.
it does. I can't say enough about my journalism community. I mean, it's my um, a lot of my best friends are journalism people, and I'm so grateful for everything that they did, and I wouldn't have made it in this career without them. And so, if you're an advisor watching this and you're kind of like, this was the lifeline I needed, also never hesitate to call us and
Yeah.
just say, I need someone to talk to.
Yeah. We're here.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to
Thank you for
chat and
having
share your
me.
advice. Like I said, we might need a second episode because we have like 14 other topics to talk about because you are truly an expert at your craft. And I am so thankful that like just the universe has put you in a position to be able to help widespread advisors in all over the country, really, because you're so good at encouraging advisors and building that atmosphere and also the technical stuff and training on how to create really
Mhm.
beautiful, award-winning, journalistically sound yearbooks. And you're just the best storyteller. Which actually you have an event coming up in Houston, so I'm so
I do.
excited of storytelling. So if you, where can people find you online? Where like on Instagram?
I am on Instagram. I don't have, I'll be completely honest with y'all, I don't have a lot of like work related social media. I probably should, but I just, my work is my life in a sense.
Same.
So I've had the same Instagram handle since college and I will never change it. It's at Samantha Amazing. You
Don't
can probably
change
put
it.
a
I love
little
it.
link, a little thing down the bottom if you want. And I am on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be a lot more active on LinkedIn because it's such a good social media platform for work
It
and what we
is.
do. So you can find me there, and
Sounds good.
my account's open, and so are my DMs. So please don't hesitate to let me know if you need anything. And then if you want to contact me by email, samantha.berry@kdcady.com. So
Cool.
that's
Sounds
me.
good. Thank you guys so much. We will see you in the next episode. I'll see you then. Bye.
Thanks, friends.